Come away with me, Lucille, in my merry Oldsmobile. You can go as far as you like with me in my merry Oldsmobile.
Shame on you.
We'll see.
Oh, dear.
Oh, some pippin'.
Oh, dear.
I wonder what I can do about that. Well, yes, I think I'll just swing right in here. Oh, what?
Yes, we girls have our troubles. Just fits.
What are you looking at? Oh, pardon me.
Open up. Open the door. Open up the door. Open up. Open.
Who's there?
Open. It's I.
Oh, it's you. Oh, dear.
Arr.
Oh.
Come away with me, Lucille, in my great big automobile. Down the road of life we'll fly, automobiling, you and I. To the church we'll swiftly steal, then our wedding bells will peal. You can go as far as you like with me in my great big automobile.
Oh, my operation. Go away, you big baboon, or I'll knock you for a row of loops and make it soon. You're the type that should be taken out and drowned. You give me an awful pain when you're around. When I want to take a little auto ride around the town, I'll pick out the kind of guy who doesn't always try to clown. You can pack your little trunk and get in that rusty pile of junk that you try to pass off as an automobile. Come on. I have my Oldsmobile outside.
Many people thought the automobile would never replace the horse, but it certainly took the place of the parlor sofa on a Sunday afternoon. Those old cars looked funny, but they struggled along in spite of the horse laughs. Let's all sing about the old olds that's still rolling right along. Now follow the ball.
Young Johnny Steele has an Oldsmobile. He loves a dear little girl. She is the queen of his gas machine. She has his heart in a whirl. Now when they go for a spin, you know she tries to learn the auto. So he lets her steer while he gets her ear and whispers soft and low. Come away with me, Lucille, in my merry Oldsmobile. Down the road of life we'll fly, automobiling, you and I. To the church we'll swiftly steal, then our wedding bells
has an Oldsmobile. He loves a dear little girl.
And a girl.
She is the queen of his gas machine. She has his heart in a whirl. Now when they go for a spin, you know, she tries to learn the art or so. He lets her steal while he gets her ear and whispers soft and low. Come away with me, Lucille, in my merry Oldsmobile. Down the road of life we'll fly, automobile coupling, you and I. Through the church we'll swiftly steal.
Hey.
Then our wedding bells will peal. You can go as far as you like with me in my merry Oldsmobile.
Okay. Okay. I pronounce you man and wife. Come on, go to it.
I feel like I'm supposed to sing the hot, hot, hot song now.
In my merry Oldsmobile.
What up, cyberspace cadets, cyber fanbots everywhere, Americans, and of course all the people, the Odesians, people on Odyssey. What is up? It's Excelereight Prostate. It's Wednesday, and it's time to get more energetic. That's right. Let's pick it up for accelerated deconstruction, or as we like to call it here, XD. And of course, you know I'm the smoothie brain on this deal. The two wrinkly brain people are Tim of the Hun.
Hey, everybody.
And the one and only Excelereight.
We like jokes. Dave is funny. Did you guys see that today?
No. Oh yeah.
So
yeah. The training thing, yeah.
Yeah. So the Netflix trans walkout happened, and then Dick Masterson and some other guy, and like a handful of people, equally as many people as walked out. Right? They came in with signs, and all they said was, "We like jokes," and Dave is funny, and they just started yelling it. One of the guys kind of got too close to the protester crowd. He had just on a piece of crappy wood, a sign saying Dave is funny, and they ran up to him, took his sign, tore it up, and then he was just left holding a stick, and they're like, "He's got a weapon!" And then they got in his face, and they're like, "Quit pushing me!" Like they're shoving him back. You know what I mean? This typical nonsense that they do. And then they're like, "Drop your weapons." So he dropped the stick after the sign is. And he's like, "What? I'm just being peaceful. I think Dave's funny." I just wanted to tell the world I think Dave's funny. Isn't that my free speech? And then, I don't know. Somebody was repent, yelling at him. It was insane. Those people are nuts.
Repent?
I can't. Yeah. You bring in more, more credibility to the idea that these people are in a cult. They just, now I'm not even thinking that they're in a cult and they don't know it. I think they're very well aware that what they're doing is joining a cult.
Well, they're shouting repent.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. There's some videos up on YouTube, but to put it lightly, no productivity was lost at Netflix today. There's people that walked out. There weren't very many, and I'm gonna guess that they weren't that useful anyway.
Well, I would say if they're busy protesting and that's what they're into, obviously they aren't going to be very productive.
Exactly. I mean, I doubt they're the people that are helping Netflix make better content and get grounds on its competitors.
Yeah.
During every show they put out has to pay some sort of tribute to the social justice gods.
Well, did you know that it's actually part of the banking criterion now is to have social justice in your
They sneak in everywhere. They get their little offices of diversity, equity, and inclusion up, and they
No,
say
it's how you become. It's how you get your credit rating as another bank. You're not allowed to do banking or business as a corporation. Your actual overall rating and ability to borrow and transact money will be decreased if you don't put this shit into effect.
So I mean, it's in the. What I'm saying is, regardless, what happened is somebody said somewhere up the chain, right? They got, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They got died. They got deed. Right? And so as soon as that happens, you start implementing all these dumb policies that don't really help anybody. Because we know they don't have any solutions, right? Like their idea is that as long as we can get everybody to think just like us, then utopia.
Well, that's not how it works.
Yeah, well, I know, but that's the creed of the woke. Everybody must think like me, and then utopia.
Well, I could tell you what they think utopia is garbage. I mean, I live in Portland. I can tell you exactly what leftist life is like.
And it ain't utopia.
Well, okay, so I'm listening to a country rap song called Devil in My Waist. It's got Demon Jones, Mercules, and Adam Calhoun in it.
And
right?
By waste, you mean like excrement? Or
what?
Is that waste? Is it devil in my waist?
Waist, like your waistband. Suggesting
okay.
he has a gun on his hip. It's one of those. The main chorus is "Hold up, wait, I'm on the way."
Oh, I thought he was giving birth to some politicians or something.
Got the devil in my waist and a machete in my gray sweatpants. Hot damn, I ain't had nobody chained. That's one of the lines. It's like, it's Southerners that have been to jail and they're responding to people threatening them online. And it's a really fun to rap along with song. There's really fast and slow parts in it. It's got a fantastic beat. And I always turn it up because I love the sound of people like me talking shit the way I grew up talking shit. So I enjoy the song and I crank it. Well, some stupid motherfucker in a lowered 94 Blazer. I shit you not. He's in a lowered 94 Blazer. Guy has zero fucking intelligence, y'all. Lowered 94 Blazer. Black in a gray hoodie, and he has the stones to get in front of the bitch that's rapping this shit and flick a cigarette at my car. He tried to get it in my window, but I'm too quick for that shit, and I moved my car so he couldn't, and it bounced off my windshield. He's lucky we were on a busy road, or I'd have pulled him out of his fucking car and put his head in his fucking headlight, dude. Fuck that motherfucker. And it's just because he didn't approve of the song, because Demon Jones says Nigga. I know we're not allowed to say it online no more. In the song. Not a hard R. And never mind the fact Demon's part black, but whatever. Stupid motherfucker threw a cigarette at my fucking car because he didn't approve of a song. He's lucky he didn't discover exactly what it's like to fuck with a gearhead's car. Because I'd have fucked him up if I'd gotten my fucking hands on him. Oh my god, I felt true violence in my heart, dude.
I believe it.
It's funny. I used to fight over ramen. You think I won't slap you if I got a problem? That's like the line I say, and then this motherfucker speeds past me and flicks a cigarette at me. And I'm like, are you retarded? Like, if somebody's enjoying a song like that and they're enjoying the shit talking, would you really want to pick on somebody that enjoys shit talking? Aren't you asking for a fight?
I mean, let's be real. Like, it sets up a level of entitlement where they just expect people to stand around and take it. He probably just would have been shocked and ran away if you did anything.
Oh no, I confronted him. I kept driving by him and screaming out my window, "Motherfucker, I can flick a cigarette too, bitch." I was crazy. I'm a loud bitch, so it's like I have no problem getting loud enough for them to hear. So, I'm loud. Like, y'all don't even understand. Irate has me on like a compressor that's maxed out because I'm naturally so loud, I will blow out headphones and all kinds of stuff if I get mad. So, yeah, no, this motherfucker. Oh, he pissed me off. And yeah, so anyway, I can tell you what it's like to live in their utopia, and it's so lovely, y'all. It's just wonderful. They're
Well, I
lucky
heard
I'm not armed.
Portland had like 1,000-something shootings so far this year in wake of their police reform.
1,000? Wow.
I think that sounds about right.
Oh, what was the news? It's talking about Portland shootings. Yeah, so it recorded 67 killings so far, which is a large record with 1,000 total shootings that have left an additional 314 people injured. So blue state, probably weakest police force on the planet as far as what they're allowed to do. Really strict gun laws, especially in Portland.
Only in Portland, actually. If you're outside Portland, you can open carry.
Yeah, I don't think these people were opening carrying.
No, I'm saying outside of Portland, most of the state you can open carry. It's not a big deal. Most counties have open carry laws. That's why you see all the guns get pulled at all the protests. They're allowed to carry them. It's an open carry state. Isn't that weird? Okay, so the other thing in the most recent election, the entire state voted to decriminalize all drugs. And this is all in one bill. Decriminalize all drugs and defund the police. They did it all in one bill.
Yeah, they're straight up saying that the city needs, they're about 1,000 police officers short, and the reason why is because the city leaders slashed $27 million from the police budget.
Yeah, they did that while they decriminalized all drugs as well. So they've asked all degenerates to come to the state, and they have less protection for the denizens that already live here. Oh, and we get boatloads of illegals all the time too. In fact, they make it hard to find houses here because they get to pile up a bunch at a time and shove into a neighborhood they don't belong in, where they piss everybody off and the cops get called a lot. It's really great. There's nobody else that speaks Spanish in the area. There's nobody to translate for them. There's nobody to help them. So you have sometimes close to 30, 35 people in a 4-bedroom house, and they're just doing the stuff they're used to from wherever they're from. They'll build shit in the front yard and everything, and then all their neighbors start screaming and yelling at them, and nobody knows what anybody's saying, and it turns into fist fights and guns getting drawn and shit, and it's happened more than once. And I live in, this town used to be called one of the top all-American towns. And you need to move into a place where you belong so that you can speak to somebody. If you don't know the people, you don't go in there and fucking dump your shit everywhere. You're going to piss everybody off.
Isn't that what killed Portland, though? Is it became such a nice place to live that a bunch of, smug, fresh college grads all went there with ambitions and their ridiculous liberal ideology. And then 10 years later, you have Portland today.
Actually, you know what started the decline of Portland? Legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana in Oregon back in the 70s.
Hey.
Portland's always had problems. In the 80s, they had white supremacists killing people of color in the streets. So in the 90s, you had people fighting skinheads in the streets. And then by the 2000s, that's when Antifa started popping up, and you had all these fights.
Well, it certainly isn't the Portlandia as described in the television show.
Actually, it kind of is.
Is it?
I think it might
haven't
actually
watched-
be worse.
I actually haven't watched Portlandia. I thought it was just smug.
Portlandia kind of focuses on the drugs. It's kind of a weird show. Like, I've only watched pieces of it, but Portland is shit, and I can tell you why. All the people that are from Portland left. It's all full of people that are not from Portland. Most of them are from Seattle, believe it or not.
Has its own problems.
Well, yeah,
I get-
they just
I get the
exported
two-
their stupidity.
Yeah, I get the two mixed up constantly.
Well, the great thing was the mayor, Ted Wheeler, came out and said he was going to ban all transactions with Texas because of their abortion law. And he had to rescind it that day when he realized that over a third of their commissioned workforce for all of their infrastructure, their road repair, data, all of it, almost a third of them are Texans. Just for the city. That doesn't include the state. They're importing Midwesterners and Southerners to do the work that Oregonians just can't be fucked to do out here. It's amazing. This is the most dysfunctional place I've ever seen. It's bizarre.
We could probably do a whole episode on Portland.
Yes, I probably could.
But that is not what today's episode's about. Actually, it's been a while since we pulled out a video from New Discourses. They did one on sustainability, which is a word that is being thrown around and is almost always just an excuse to abuse and enact tyrannies. So we were going to take a nice, easy day off, just listen to James Lindsay talk a little bit about sustainability and interject our comments in between. It's a long hour and a half video. We're probably not going to get through it. Maybe we'll do a part 1 and 2. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just leave it for you guys to finish watching the video if you're interested on your own.
Well,
Which sustainability are we talking about here?
It's probably related to the planet.
Okay.
I'll put it that way.
My head's gonna explode, guys.
No, dude. And we can't say anything.
It's
goes
the
against
sun,
climate.
stupid.
I mean, hold on a second.
It's the sun. I'm not denying climate. That would be stupid. We see that all the time.
Climate changes 4 times a year, and that's the truth. All right, so I've got this at 1.5 speed on Excel, right? Is that correct, sir?
That's what I thought, so we can get through as much as possible.
Let's roll.
If it's too fast, we can slow it down.
We don't have a watch link, though.
Yeah, you gotta go live, Irie.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of the New Discourses podcast, where we are going to talk about frickin' Herbert Marcuse again. I'm James Lindsay. I'm your host, founder, and president, or something. Whatever this is. We're going to talk about Marcuse again, and you can hear how thrilled I am about that proposition. I'm actually getting really sick of this guy. Just tell you a story. Recently on a flight, I was reading One Dimensional Man, and I just said to myself, I don't want to read this anymore, and I just stopped. And then on another flight, not that long after, I was reading another piece by him that I haven't mentioned very often, Counter-Revolution of Revolt, which is in the 70s, and I got about a third of the way through it, and I just was like, ugh, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep reading this guy. But it's very important to talk about Herbert Marcuse again and again and again and again, because we live in Herbert Marcuse's world. And really just reading his major works, his biggest works of the 50s, 60s, and I guess 70s, you can get a real sense that somebody picked this up, meaning mostly the New Left that followed him, but also certain characters picked this up and saw it as a template for building the world that we live in now. If you were a big Marcuse fan, you would say that Marcuse was just right, but it's very clear that his vision has been forced into being, and it did not have to be this way. And so we live in the world of Herbert Marcuse. Those major works that I reference are Eros and Civilization, his 1955 attempt to push Freudian psychoanalysis into Marxian theory. And the rough idea of that book, not to get too diverted from today's theme, which is going to be about the new sensibility that Marcuse brought us to, and that's threatening the world now in his vision. But the point of Eros and Civilization, kind of broadly speaking, is that the society that we live in, this advanced capitalist society being written in 1955, forces people to repress their libido to become productive. So your libido could be obviously the sexual side, your sexual urges, your sexual drives, but it's also kind of your just will to do things. So a Freudian libido, and they're kind of the same thing. And he says that the capitalist society represses the libido. The eros is the kind of sexual side of that, forces you to tamp that down and channel it into productive work. And then that productive work, that repression, I should say, actually causes you to become aggressive. And so the aggression and violence inherent in the capitalist system has its roots in the suppression of eros, or of the libido in general. So the libido that might be released into the sexual realm is now being released into an aggressive realm, a libido dominandi, you might call it, a will to dominate. And so that's kind of his earliest major work, less important. But in 1964, he publishes this book, One Dimensional Man. I've talked about this a little bit before. I'll read a little bit from it. And this is a huge deal. He has this idea that the consumer society, kind of by the same process I just talked about, flattens society into a one-dimensional process. Get up, go to work, do what you're supposed to, make money, buy stuff, enjoy your life, do it again tomorrow. And you don't think outside of the box. You don't think outside of the pattern that's in front of you, and everything in society reinforces that pattern to keep you stuck in it. And so you're not doing a critical theory of society anymore. You're not doing a critical theory of your own experience in society, so you're not becoming a discontented proletariat revolutionary. So this is 1964. 1965, he writes Repressive Tolerance, which we did a whole series on here on the New Discourses podcast. And repressive tolerance is this idea that we have to rethink tolerance, because that which maintains this repressive society, which is conservatism generally speaking, or right-wing thought generally thinking, as he defines it, that which maintains this repressive society. So even the most liberal person on the planet who believes, and this is going to ring true of what you hear from the radical left all the time. I even saw today on Twitter some educator claiming that our completely Marxist schools are currently a center-right institution because they're not total wackadoodle leftists. And so the point for them is that even if you are this kind of very left liberal character, but you believe in the structure of a free liberal democratic society, then you're a fascist. You want to preserve the status quo of the existing system. You want to use incremental progress, step-by-step change, so you're actually evil. And you are part of the right, according to their thought. That's their definition of the right. And it is everybody who wants to maintain the existing system instead of overthrowing it for a complete new one. And so the left is the people who want to overthrow it for a completely new society, the revolutionaries, the radical revolutionaries. That's the only left. Everybody else is on the right. So you can take your character, like my friend Helen Pluckrose, for example, who's very, very ardently left and wants to tell you that she's very left all the time, as many people who have encountered our joint work and experienced her personality on social media will know. And she is a rightist, according to this formulation in repressive tolerance and under Marcusean thought. She is an all-out conservative rightist, even as left liberal as she is and as principled as she is in left liberalism. She's a rightist because she still wants to maintain the essential character of our society. And the thesis of repressive tolerance is we have to rethink tolerance, to be tolerant of the left as understood this way, and to be utterly intolerant of the right as understood this way. And so you can see how the two sets of rule books idea of our current world, the woke have two sets of rule books. For example, I say a lot on Twitter. That's what this means, is the double standards. The left is to be given tolerance even when they're violent, according to Marcuse, because violence is justified against a repressive regime that won't allow it any other way. The left is supposed to be outside of the law, because the law itself is designed to maintain order and to maintain the existing system. So therefore, it's all illegitimate. So you have to be outside of it. That's his argument. And again, we're talking far left people, by normal everyday standards, are still going to be considered hardcore rightists by this definition. Meanwhile, he says that you have to censor the right, so that they not only can they not be tolerated in their activity and their action and their anything that they do, not only can they not be tolerated, but they also have to be censored and pre-censored so that the thought can't even enter their head. That's what he says. And he holds up Hitler. He says, well, if we just wouldn't have extended to him democratic tolerance, then he couldn't have had the Holocaust. We would have avoided, he says, Auschwitz and a world war, if we would have just not extended democratic tolerance to people like Hitler. But if he says what's ultimately necessary with that is to prevent, it's not Hitler himself, it's the movement that formed around him.
Very familiar to everybody with the technocratic censorship and the government pushing for more technocratic censorship. It is very Marcusean.
Okay.
No, we've already talked about repressive tolerance on this channel. I just wanted to reiterate, this should sound very familiar to people, what he just said about Marcuse and this idea that we have to go as far as we have to pre-censor people, right? I mean, that's where we're at. That's the world we're living in. This is happening. Right? Anything that does not conform to far left dogma is de facto considered right wing and therefore must be stricken from civil conversation. The books must be burned. But yeah, we can go on. Yeah. In fact, mandate it. Actually, it's child abuse if your kid identifies as blind and you don't blind your child.
Fuck. Oh, sorry, y'all. I was muted and I was saying very wise shit. I'm going to shut up now. All right, you ready?
So you have to censor and even pre-censor people on this right wing, as he defines it, so that the thought of maintaining the society can't even enter their head, just in case it becomes fascistic. So that's 1965-69. He writes the very important essay on liberation, which we did a podcast series here on the podcast about. Very important essay. We're going to touch on that some today. Outlines basically what the new revolution looks like. I think it's probably the most important essay to understanding leftism since the end of the 1960s that I've read, even taking into account pieces of woke literature like, you know, Gender Trouble from Judith Butler, or Mapping the Margins from Kimberly Crenshaw, or any of this stuff. And then just to elaborate briefly here, because we're going to come back to this essay, I don't want to dwell on it, but that's where he lays out 4 chapters in the essay on liberation. And the first one is a biological foundation for socialism, which is freaky enough. Second is a new sensibility, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today in this episode. And then in the third chapter, he outlines a section, I don't know how to call it. It's like 100 pages. Is it a book? Is it an essay? I don't know. But the third one is subverting forces in transition. So he kind of talks about, well, what's upsetting the apple cart of the existing society? What's working? And he's looking at the so-called ghetto populations. He's looking at the student intelligentsia. He's looking at these liberation movements in the third world, like the Viet Cong, like Che Guevara, and these national liberation fronts, these very violent communist liberation fronts, and saying that this fourth chapter and section is that we need to find solidarity, a common line of thought between all of those, and create a new movement out of that. In fact, he calls it a new working class, a new proletariat. And I just recently did an episode of the podcast talking about his new proletariat and the need to create basically what I refer to now as identity Marxism, and to just kind of shore up that term. You know, you got classical Marxism that got branded as vulgar Marxism because it's only economics, and then eventually in the 20s, 10s and 20s, 1910s, 1920s, you end up seeing these cultural Marxists, especially George Lukács and Antonio Gramsci coming into the scene in many regards. Mao Zedong in China is a cultural Marxist, but in Europe, not going to China, in Europe you have out of cultural Marxism, out of that kind of milieu, Lukács, Gramsci, you end up having the establishment of the Frankfurt School, which develops the critical theory, which is actually neo-Marxism. And what I say that neo-Marxism progresses, it's complicated a little bit, but I say 3 generations, but in a sense there's 4, but it's like grandparent, parent, and then there's 2 children, if you follow me, like siblings. So you have the very early rumblings of the Frankfurt School, which was very cultural Marxist, leading into Horkheimer. That's generation 1. Horkheimer lays out the critical theory, very kind of formal. Marcuse takes over after Khrushchev is confessed to the sin after World War II, but also after Khrushchev confesses to the sins of Stalin and becomes this new character on the scene. And it's a very different character, neo-Marxism. In the last podcast I did, where I talked about the emergence of this new proletariat, and identity Marxism has its roots right there. Second generation neo-Marxism is the birthplace of what I call identity Marxism. And then it splits. You kind of have the critical theory school staying very philosophical. Jürgen Habermas takes it over. And then you have Marcuse's little revolutionaries, Angela Davis, and all of these radical new leftists. They go off in a slightly different direction. So there's your kind of your 2 siblings, the philosophical older brother that's largely irrelevant, and the wild, radical, lesbian younger sister that's very relevant, that became woke. And so, to give up, again, to short the term, we have Marxism generating, kind of not working, and generating cultural Marxism as a response. Then neo-Marxism sort of fits into that, refines it into this new kind of entity that's very suspicious of the way that consumerist society reproduces itself, how advanced society is succeeding. It's eliminating the realities of a Marxian proletariat ever arising in the true sense. So neo-Marxism is focused on that the society works, that capitalism works, and they have to actually reckon with that. And that just a cultural analysis isn't going to be enough to generate.
So, yeah, the classical Marxism, that's like saying classical dog shit. I completely agree. One of the things that makes it, or at least for a while, made it really hard to pin anything on these, this new way of Marxist woke thought is that it's removed itself just enough from Marx that it's not Marxism anymore. But it is Marxian, right? That's where its roots come from. And that's what he's trying to explain. I don't think it's really incredibly important, but you just say, yeah, it all started with Marx, and then because socialism never works, a whole bunch of crazy fucking people stacked up upon it and said, maybe if we try it this way, it'll work this time. And every single time we adopt it, and that's how we got here.
So everybody can go home now?
End of story.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in to. No, just kidding.
We're kidding. Stay right where you are. Don't move. Don't move a muscle.
Yeah, we're gonna get through more of this video.
That's right. I've only 2 days without hot water. Just saying.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Are you boiling water, brother?
Well, yeah, I have to. Yeah. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Talk to me off after the show.
Okay.
The change need, and then it dives into identity politics with this kind of younger sibling version of the third generation. And that third generation identity politics, I've said, is identity Marxism. So it uses identity like race, gender, sex, sexuality, etc., ability status, fat status, and the whole law.
You're not hearing anything?
No.
So?
Not yet.
All right. Let's try this again.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Right. You hear that now?
Exasperated, etc., as Judith Butler phrased it, of identity categories and intersectional thought, or intersectionality in general, as identity Marxism. It uses the same cultural Marxist apparatus, but it takes identity as a proxy for culture. If you're black, you have black culture. If you're Latino, you're Latinx, you have Latinx culture. If you are, Chicanx or whatever, then you have Chicanx culture. And all of these different identities. If you're queer, you have queer culture. All these different identities become like nations. Very real. I mean, very seriously. I mean, in the folkish sense. All of these guys were big fans of kind of Herderian German, the German, what's his first name? Friedrich Johann, I forget one of his German names. Herder, anyway, probably both of those. And Herder was a big nationalist and had this idea of the folkish religion, that the people had a spirit to them, a folkgeist, or Volksgeist, I guess is how you say that. And so, the spirit of a country that gives it its character, and it's almost like a character on the world stage. I think there's even like a Japanese anime one of my kids was into where like literally countries are represented by individuals, and they have like this play or whatever, there's drama playing out between them, and it's kind of thinking like that. So the character becomes the representative of the Volksgeist, the spirit of that people. And so this has been transposed onto identity categories through the doctrine of structural determinism, that the structural forces of society, whether it's racism, sexism, even vulgar Marxism and classism to a degree, ableism, whatever, creates a structural experience that creates a cultural experience for you. And that cultural experience of being, say, black in a white world, or Latinx in a cis heteronormative, Western-centric, to draw out all the pieces that matter, white world in which still Latinx people are said to participate in white supremacy and anti-blackness or whatever, this complicated intersectional nonsense. I call that whole intersectional crap identity Marxism now. But that's beside the point. We'll come back to this. Solidarity is where he wraps up in
That's a good way to describe it.
And then this fifth work of Marcuse, just to kind of put a bookmark in all of that, is this Counter-Revolution and Revolt, which is really a sort of entertaining read as far as I've made it. All of these works I've read all of, with the exception of Counter-Revolution and Revolt. Like I said, I got about a third of the way through it the first time, and I just quit. I actually wasn't reading One Dimensional Man for the first time when I bailed out on it recently. But I think it was the third time maybe trying to get through it. And
I want to break. All right, Bunny, we're listening to New Discourses. A guy named James Lindsay. I'm sure you're familiar probably with some of his tweets. He's very active on Twitter. He is one of the 3 people that wrote those fake papers that got published. And that's what he is not, most famous for. So, and he is like he is the out of fucks dude when it comes to CRT. So, and I love this guy. And he's a mathematician by trade, exactly. So and this is kind of his hobby, is like shitting on these people. And I love it.
And he has a huge website called newdiscourses.com. And if you haven't checked it out, honey, you should.
It's got a wonderful dictionary so that you can translate common phrases said by woke people.
I got a woke translator right here.
I don't think you understand Marcuse until you read him 5 or 6 times. He's so difficult to really figure out what he's talking about. But Counter-Revolution and Revolt, he seems to be pretty plain. He's pretty pissed off because he sees that his revolution that he wanted sparked up. The 60s ended with a lot, especially 68, with a lot of riots, and it appeared that the little revolution was going to spark off and go, and we're going to have the whole thing. And then society stabilized. And in 72, he's bitching about the Nixon administration, and he's all pissed off. And it's like communism is going to get away from us. We have to get communism. He's just kind of like he loses it and is giving the game away pretty clearly by then, which is sort of interesting. But at any rate, these 5 works together, I think, especially the last 4 of them, Eros and Civilization's not that pertinent comparatively, but One Dimensional Man, Repressive Tolerance, and Essay on Liberation, and to a degree, Counter-Revolution and Revolt, those 3 in the 60s are my kind of core, really outline the world that we're living in. That was my big point there. And so now we want to understand the contours of that world. And what I said is we're going to drill down on this idea of the new sensibility, which is the second chapter of An Essay on Liberation. I'm not going to read it to you again. In fact, I'm going to read as little of Marcuse as I can for this episode. I just want to point out this concept of the new sensibility because I have kind of boldly, maybe rashly even, spoken about what I think that new sensibility is. And in fact, I just named it. I did identity Marxism, basically. In other words, intersectionality. I said intersectionality became our new sensibility, but I think it's more complicated than that. And I think the people who read Marcuse in different contexts have used him in different ways. And I think we actually have two nested ideas of a new sensibility, a bigger outside one, think of like Russian dolls. And on the inside, we have intersectionality as the smaller one that's actually a part of the bigger one. And the bigger one is sustainability. And I think this is derivable from his work. And then if you look at certain characters on the big stage who are pushing all of these major changes, Klaus Schwab, for example, with the World Economic Forum would be an example. I don't know if George Soros was a huge fan of Marcuse or not. He certainly would have read him, I would imagine. These kind of characters are in fact pushing the sustainability agenda. Even I don't know what Bill Gates' relationship to Herbert Marcuse is, if any. It's not like a thing that scientists tend to read, but he's pushing the sustainability. So this has really become this kind of like culture of sustainability across everything big. The climate change narrative is only comprehensible this way. Turns out the virus narrative is made comprehensible this way. Everything is being packaged up in terms of sustainability, and they're saying that everything must change because of sustainability. So that's the other piece of the new sensibility that Marcuse has outlined. And it's a little more difficult to draw this out of what he's written, but it's there. I don't want to read a ton, but it's actually huge in One-Dimensional Man. It's harder to spot in it's there in Essay on Liberation. And if you listen to the series, you'll hear me rail on it a few times when we get to it. Marcuse has this habit of like sprinkling in huge ideas across in like weird ways across many long tangentious paragraphs. And so it's very difficult to spot like here's the place he says it. But I'll try to give you a taste of it without reading too much of them. I do just want to read exactly like one part.
Hold on, pause for a second.
Counter-revolution and revolt to you.
Okay, so the one thing that a lot of people don't know, and you would have to know some pretentious assholes that are really into philosophy to know this shit, is that post-Marxism is written intentionally tongue-in-cheek. There are a lot of double entendres and hidden stuff in the writing. So when he's bitching about this, he's bitching about the post-modernist method. This is how literally all these philosophers write. So sorry if everything's confusing and fucked up, but you got to read between the lines as well and hear the stuff that isn't being said.
Right. Since it's being peer reviewed, they're probably, writing with that in mind. So they're writing little jokes in for their peers to giggle at. Right.
It was.
I feel like it's more like code.
It's all a fucking circle.
It is. It's virtue signals, special language between them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like their club and their coded language is how it started. Really was. The double entendres was supposed to be like a show off of how smart we are. We created our own language and messages within the message we gave you. Oh, aren't we just so clever? These are the same people that would snap instead of clap and wore all black with a fucking golf cap or a beret, So it's not like we're talking about peaceniks and stuff like that. These people always think they're clever, and this is why. Because they have this stupid tongue-in-cheek way of writing.
Cheeky.
Yes. It's annoying. I fucking hate postmodernists. Ugh. Sorry.
That kind of sums the whole thing up, but then I think I have to flesh it out by getting into Essay on Liberation. But here, and like I said, One-Dimensional Man is basically all about this. And I'll read a little bit of that too. So just to jump straight into the idea, where did this idea of sustainable...
What?
There. Now I see the screen again. I can't hear the show.
Are you hearing it when I play it?
I don't hear it.
Ability.
Sometimes it
come from. Now you could say, oh, well, we have to think about that. And then climate change. What if the climate stuff is unsustainable? What if our approach to, travel is unsustainable? What if our approach to population is unsustainable? And by the way, Marcuse does touch upon that in these essays too, population being unsustainable. But he has this one little rant in the very beginning of Counter-Revolution and Revolt. And the official PDF, which has page numbers. Usually I read these off of websites that don't have page numbers. And this official PDF is on page 23, so it's not very far in. And he's complaining about capitalism, as you would imagine. But then he just has this one little part where he vents. He says, can one not make a living without that stupid, exhausting, endless labor? Living with less waste, fewer gadgets and plastic, but with more time and more freedom? That's his rhetorical question he asks, and he says that it's absolutely the most important thing. It's usually abstract, he says, but it's no longer, he says, it is no longer an abstract, emotional, unrealistic question. It assumes dangerously concrete, realistic, subversive forms. So the question, can one not make a living without that stupid, exhausting, endless labor? Living with less waste, fewer gadgets and plastic, but with more time and more freedom. So what he's saying is, and we're going to see this theme again and again, that we're all working too hard, that because of the advanced state of technology and capitalism, we can meet our needs without having to work in the so-called rat race he mentions all the time. We're always doing the rat race, always doing the rat race. And we can actually eject from the rat race if we just allow ourselves to. And what it means is we have to live with less. Can we not just have less and work less too, and then we'll have more time and more freedom? We'll also produce less waste, but we'll have less stuff. And having less stuff is really what this is all about. And this is one of the biggest themes in Marcuse that you have to understand what he's getting at. As far as this rat race thing goes, here near the end, this is in the solidarity section of Essay on Liberation, he says the absorption of unemployment and the maintenance of an adequate rate of profit. So he's talking about the successes of advanced capitalism, and he's comparing it against the Soviet in the third world situation. And he says, the absorption of unemployment and the maintenance of an adequate rate of profit would thus require the stimulation of demand on an ever larger scale, thereby stimulating the rat race of the competitive struggle for existence through the multiplication of waste, planned obsolescence, parasitic and stupid jobs and services. The higher standard of living, propelled by the growing parasitic sector of the economy, would drive wage demands toward capital's point of no return. And so what he's saying is that capitalism is actually, you can imagine it like an exponential growth curve, which we're all now familiar with thanks to the pandemic. And it's just growing and growing and growing. We have to have more stuff, more money, more stuff, more stuff, more stuff. And to get that, we have to work more and more hours, more time. Doesn't matter that the machines make us more productive. Doesn't matter that the average laborer shows up and does 5 times as much work, let's say, I don't know what the real number is, in the same amount of time because he has a computer and he has a robot and he has this and he has that. Doesn't matter that the productivity is way up and we're making more and more and more and more and more. This is unsustainable, is what he's saying. He says the progress of this is going to require the stimulation of demand on an ever larger scale. That's unsustainable. This is going to be a bubble that's going to pop. And meanwhile, it's making people miserable. The rat race of the competitive struggle for existence through the multiplication of waste, planned, you can't talk about anything good, planned obsolescence, parasitic and stupid jobs and services. And he says this produces a higher standard of living, but it's a parasitic sector of the economy, and it's going to drive that level of demand toward capital's point of no return. So he's obviously very upset and bothered by this idea. And again, that's from Essay on Liberation. Let's see if I can actually skip quickly to where he talks about the same idea that at the beginning of the third section, Subverting Forces in Transition, he talks about this same kind of thing. It's again, he says, we have an increasingly automated machine system, no longer used as a system of exploitation, but allow that distantiation of the laborer from the instruments of production, which Marx foresaw at the end of capitalism. So technology is going to get good enough where we don't have to work as much anymore. That extra productivity can be transformed into leisure time to not having to do things. And he says here, it says the workers would cease to be the principal agents of material production and become its supervisors and regulators. The emergence of a free subject within the realm of necessity.
We have a problem here. Marx is functionally retarded. I can't hear anybody.
Yeah, no, it's...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, this is the utopian aspect of Marxism that they're talking about, right? They have this weird idea that we're just going to get into this era of hyperabundance and nobody will have to work and everybody will just get to enjoy the finer things of life. Like, they just imagine everybody sitting around and discussing philosophy and becoming, I guess, big-brained academics that, let's be real honest, that's all these people, like, from Marx to Marcuse, that's all they do, right? They just get paid to sit around.
Marx wasn't even an academic.
Write bullshit down.
Marx wasn't even an academic. He was a grifter.
Yeah, sure, right? But that's what I'm saying. They didn't have to... There were people that never had to work in the first place that are coming up with all these ideas. How can everybody live like me?
Okay, but we now have living proof that leisure or extra leisure is not good for Americans. When we locked everybody down, our suicide rates have gone through the roof, folks, and it's not just because people can't make money. You're taking away people's purpose. They need
Well,
something
we're
to do.
social
They need to have a
beings.
goal.
Right. We need to have interaction on a
Yeah.
physical level too, not just intellectual. The other people contacting you, hugging you, touching you, shaking your hand. We're like that,
Well, and
Yeah.
it's also amazing. I forgot what they say. Like it's like the fallacy of the times or something. But so all these writers, they talk about how eventually we're just on the cusp, right? We're right at the cusp of hyperabundance, which is what they're really talking about, right? Where
But
production
there's no
is so high that
such
people can have it.
thing.
But yeah, so Marx was talking about it in the 1800s. Marcuse is talking about it through the mid 1900s, and like look at where we are today, right? Like, are we getting better? Yes, capitalism's really good at producing more goods, right? And it's got awesome built-in mechanisms for if one good starts getting too expensive, that we come up with replacement goods and things like that. Things socialism could never dream of. But like, still, even today, people are like, oh, well, now's the time. We're just on the cusp of hyperabundance. And like, they say that every time. It's just not true. For most of human history, you had to wake up at 5 a.m., slave until 9 p.m., then your family would get together for an hour to maybe, I don't know, dance and have fun. And then you would rinse and repeat that every day until you died, probably a untimely, fairly young death.
Okay. Yes. My point is, they keep talking about this shit like it's working, and we have more people committing suicide because they're bored and miserable than we've ever had before. Yet all these people want to do is try to give people more free time. I don't get it.
I mean, if you could give it to them without the miserableness, right? Imagine everybody just gets to pursue their dreams because there's so much abundance of everything. That's not how things work in reality. In reality, you have people living in little communist apartments like what were built in Romania and still working
Fuck.
60 hours a week to get their little ticket to go to the bread lines.
Mm-hmm. It's not much different up here in Portland. Good luck finding a house. They keep tearing up all the houses and putting in giant fucking apartment complexes. It's fucking... They're doing the same thing in America and nobody's paying it up. Portland's gonna fall. Like, y'all don't understand. This place is gonna fall apart. There is nothing but chain corporations up here. And they're insidious chains because they'll work to make themselves look like mom and pop shops. They'll try to make sure they keep their shop small, but there will be 36 of them in the area. Everything is a fucking chain. It's not sustainable. This place is collapsing. We have food shortages. Dude, Fred Meyer has a fucking... They have the little detectors that they do to make sure you're not stealing shit. They have those set to detect the blood and red meat up here. Because shit's gone to that sideways.
So what you're saying is the Marcusian world, it starts in Portland. So
It starts in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
It's like they check your receipt if you buy red meat.
And now they're going
How the
to
fuck-
check you if you spend more than $600.
Yeah.
Well, you think that should be turned on Congress?
It's really illegal, actually. They aren't allowed to do that. Once you make the financial transaction of giving them your money, they have no right to that property anymore. It's yours. This is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It has been the whole time.
Yeah,
In fact,
even the $10,000 transaction thing that they use to catch money launderers and
it's completely a violation.
That's a violation. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and Walmart will stand by it. They don't give a fuck. I just walk away. I don't give a shit. There's nothing they can do. I have a receipt in my hand. They can fuck off.
Indeed.
I'm not showing them. I just do. And I do that at every store. Like, have a nice day.
Yeah, well, the person getting paid minimum wage is probably not going to, very unlikely to turn all Karen.
Oh no, the little Asian women up here love to do it, and I just look down at them. So does my 9-year-old, and we just kind of giggle and keep walking. Literally, my 9-year-old's 5'3", y'all. So like everybody in my house is I'm like 5'6". I was 5'7", but something happened. And all my kids are taller than me, except for my 9-year-old. So I walk into a store, and a lot of people kind of clear the area because there's just like this herd of Amazons. It's like my oldest is like 5'10", and then it's like 5'8", and then yeah. So everybody just kind of moves.
Bud. That shrinky bud, man, do it to you every time.
I think it's because I fucked up my neck real bad.
It's the shrinky bud. Holy shit!
Either that or I broke my spine and don't know it.
Oh, God bless you. You ready to roll? What with more?
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
This is just crazy. I can't believe they're talking about this shit like it actually would work, and we're getting proof in our face right now that it doesn't.
Oh my God. I mean, that whole thing outside of Netflix is a beautiful little microcosm of exactly what they want the world to look like.
Yeah, because they're fighting against the extreme right wing of people like Dave Chappelle.
Mm-hmm. That Nazi.
Yeah.
Dude, you know what pisses me off is they're calling him transphobic for an entire set he dedicated to a trans woman.
It's insane, man. It literally is.
And those are her favorite type of jokes, dude.
Like, it's not the point of Tim. The point is that he's guilty of wrongthink and it must be censored.
Oh, even though he still hates white people?
Yep.
And said so openly in his special?
Yeah. He attacks everybody.
Yeah.
Ooh, how'd that happen?
And
But white's not a culture, so.
well, it's ironic
we learned that
because
from those wonderful ladies in that diversity space.
oh yeah, his wife, Dave Chappelle's wife, is Asian, so just pointing that out.
Yes.
So
Yes,
Dave's
he is.
he's guilty of race trading too.
See? I mean, really. All right, you ready to go? Let's roll.
So the realm of necessity makes us have to work. But if we don't have to work very much because our tools and our machines and our gadgets and our plastic make it easier and get it done for us, we don't have to work as much and we can become free subjects within that realm. But that's not what advanced capitalism is actually doing. He says, already today, the achievements of science and technology permit the play of the productive imagination, experimentation with the possibilities of form and matter hitherto enclosed in the density of unmastered nature. The technical transformation of nature tends to make things lighter, easier, prettier, the loosening up of reification. The material becomes increasingly susceptible, and by the way, that's a Lukácsian idea, the reification. So it's cultural Marxism. The material becomes increasingly susceptible and subject to aesthetic forms which enhance its exchange value, the artistic, the modernistic banks, office buildings, kitchens, sales rooms, and salespeople, etc. Within the framework of capitalism, the tremendous growth in the productivity of labor enforces the ever-enlarged production of luxuries, and that's in quotes, scare quotes, so-called luxuries, wasteful in the armament industry and in the marketing of gadgets, devices, trimmings, and status symbols. The same trend, he says, of production and consumption, which makes for the affluence and attraction of advanced capitalism, makes for the perpetuation of the struggle for existence. Yep. Look at that, it's a rat race. For the increasing necessity to produce and consume the non-necessary. See? So he's pissed off.
Okay, hold on.
What's happening?
Humans have been wanting shiny baubles since we first saw a flower.
Yeah.
This has... What?
He's basically saying that, like, the iPhone shouldn't exist, right? Because if we would have started with this line of thinking, in the 60s and 70s, we wouldn't have iPhones. Even poor families wouldn't have some sort of personal computer or computer-like device in their house for their kids. Google would not be at the tip of our fingers because the exact attitude that Marcuse is talking about, or that James is explaining from Marcuse, is the exact attitude that leads to these technological developments.
No. Actually, humans made toys for their children before they made weapons. Actually, we're carbon dating toys, to children's toys, to be older than our first clubs and knives, okay? Or knives, at least. Edged weapons, okay? We've been making jewelry and shit for human... This is stupid. All of human history says this is the opposite of human nature. You can't take away... Humans like shiny shit. We are addicted to the hormones in our brain that trigger when we get things that are pretty or colorful. It's a biological thing. I don't understand how they can say this is insane. He's trying to say human nature doesn't exist. I don't understand how you get to that conclusion, especially in a time when you were more connected to what you needed to do to survive.
Yeah, there's actually, especially in the neo-Marxist movement, the idea of humanism, right? The idea that there's just these common things that are true and have been true about humanity throughout all of history is completely thrown out the window. I mean, that's how you get this crazy 9,000 genders nonsense, right? Redefining of sexuality in defiance of objective reality.
And I was supposed to unmute myself, so I was talking about Blood Alert Guild's internet access should be a basic human right by now. And it's like that whole digital divide thing, and yeah.
I mean, at least in wealthy Western nations, we're as close to that as you can possibly be without any government mandate of saying so.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, we've got the most overfed, poor people in the world.
No shit.
So we're doing something right. Just saying. Just because they're poor, I mean,
Well,
the problem is we've given people too much sense of entitlement, right? Not too little.
Well, okay, but then look at the mental health problems that people that get a lot of government aid and stuff end up having. They end up having a bunch of problems with, depression and drug addiction and stuff like that because they don't have anything to do.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about with, that's kind of what I'm saying with about this sense of entitlement, right? Like, you live this life where you think you're entitled to certain things from certain people or the government, and it's not good for you. That's a person. It's the same reason, wealthy house moms are all fucking addicted to pills. It's what made Quaaludes popular in the 80s.
Right.
70s.
70s, 80s, sure.
Remember the sex out that didn't work? Or the sex strike that didn't work?
I remember somebody saying till they do this, we should just not have sex with men anymore. And
no, this was the thing they did in the 70s. They tried to get a national homemaker strike going.
Glorious Dynamo.
Thank you. That was her name. I almost said the wrong name.
I
Yeah.
know exactly who you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
Big round glasses and her unmovable bottom jaw.
God, that one is
mandible.
disgusting.
Because she's very rich. In a wasteland.
Yes.
What up? Sorry.
Oh shit. I love that. Pointless if it's all censored to the web will be dangerous and they will need to vaccinate it. I like that.
Well, they do have viruses, don't they?
Get the jab, internet.
Get the jab, internet.
I'm sick of all these computer viruses that I'm getting.
Yeah. McAfee. Is he still alive?
No.
He is not. All right, y'all ready?
He did not commit suicide.
Here.
So I started in 72 where he says that can't we just have less stuff? And here he's in 69, he's complaining. What we're actually doing is we're no longer just meeting people's basic needs. This is a major theme of this essay. We're no longer just meeting people's basic needs. We're meeting people's basic needs and they become comfortable in those, having those met. And then they start wanting more stuff.
Well,
Holy shit.
It's a natural progression, right? And it's like, who decides whose basic needs are? Right?
Because their needs are met. So they start looking for things that fulfill them, an expensive hobby or something. They take up, they get into classic cars, or some of my uncles did car restoration, built hot rods, for example. Loved it. Typical old school blue collar guys building out their hot rods. It was like their thing to do. And, they dumped all kinds of money and all kinds of time into this. Well, this is a luxury. It's wasteful. You don't need that. It's not a vital need. But he says in this essay that what happens is you get the working class and you meet all their basic needs and they start enjoying their life and they start having their little perks to life. They start having their hot rods they're building. They start having their man cave and their sports memorabilia.
On Twitch, Grinding the Axe says, our homeless population is better fed than China's middle class. Think about that. Boy, says a lot. What was that, Mr.
I was doing that thing where I couldn't hear the stream, but I'll try it again.
Is it because I paused it, maybe?
No, I was playing. I could hear it kind of through your speakers. I don't know, just hit play.
All this non-necessary stuff, and they start to feel like they need it. He says that becomes a sense of like a second nature that they need this stuff. Like it's almost like these luxuries become vital needs. He even says that somewhere in the essay. I'm not searching all the way through for it. He says that what this process of advanced capitalism does is it takes luxuries and makes people think that they need them. And in 72, a few years later, he's like, can't we just be happy with less? And then we wouldn't have to work and we could have our stupid revolution.
No.
So this is even complains. What he complains about here is amazing. So we just saw him complain about the increasing necessity.
Ambition is a human thing. It's a human desire. It's part of the human condition. No, people will never be satisfied with less. Never.
Yes.
Never have been. That's the whole reason we have civilization advancing throughout time. Is because
it's a major driver of innovation.
No shit. That's what I was about to say, Excel. It's like, where do we think all this fucking computers and shit came from?
Yeah.
Nobody
Well, that's why I was
just,
trying to point out
cracked one
earlier.
out one day, it's like, from eating legumes.
Yeah, if the world would have adopted a Marcusean attitude, like when Marcuse was alive,
It'd be Luddite
right?
City, dude.
Yeah, we would still be using like fucking mechanical typewriters.
we wouldn't even be there.
Ding.
Fuck, dude, this is insane. And he's right. Grinding the Axe is absolutely right. America is one of the few countries in the world that has an overweight, poor population. I think like Britain and Ireland are the other places that have the chronic problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is some shared culture there.
It's a nanny state.
Spam
It's the nanny
is
state.
So good.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Potted meat is so good.
Actually, I like spam.
So
I did too.
I love
So-
spam.
Sorry.
I do want to like kind of rewind though, right? So the kind of foods that like the British and Americans became accustomed to, like even whenever we weren't overweight, were designed for people that were laboring all day, every day. And what happened is we became incredibly sedentary without changing our eating habits.
Yes.
Yep.
And because of the addictive nature of us being, or the addictive nature of dopamine in our brains, we want to eat. Because we get dopamine hits from eating. And humans are addicted to dopamine.
We got too good at making food. Way too good.
Because we're addicted to dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is all about that dopamine, though. I was in a class. I was having to do like extra education for my accreditation, and I took a course on just the human brain, and the class that was about dopamine was called The Eagle Has Landed. I thought that was funny as shit. It was brilliant.
That's so fitting.
He was a neurosurgeon, man. The dude was so fucking smart, and made the way that the brain works sound so much. He simplified it to a fact where I think anybody could have sat in that class and actually been able to pass it when it was over. He was a great instructor. And now. All right, we're gonna roll.
I had a great psychology professor too. He taught me a lot about the brain. It was really great.
You're here. There's the good people that know a lot about the brain, because we need to know more. And apparently, these fucking cultural Marxists don't know shit about the brain. I mean, well, they know how about the brain stem and how they can manipulate that.
Yeah, they're only interested in autonomic responses, aren't they?
Very primitive parts of the brain is what they want to appeal to.
Lizard brain people.
Yes.
That's what my 9-year-old calls them.
Mm-hmm.
To produce and consume the non-necessary. Fuck enjoying your life. It's non-necessary. Enjoyment is non-necessary when we could be having communism instead, you assholes. He says the growth of, this is what he condemns. The growth of the so-called discretionary income in the United States indicates the extent to which income earned is spent on other than basic needs. Former luxuries become basic needs. See, I was like, he says it somewhere else in here. It's next sentence. Oh my God, I should read ahead. I knew what I was trying to get into. The growth of the so-called discretionary income in the United States indicates the extent to which income earned is spent on other than basic needs. You stupid working class assholes. How dare you enjoy yourself? This is his whole freaking thing. Former luxuries become basic needs. You just need that new jersey for your favorite team.
No, you need really that fucking ice maker.
It's not a basic need. You don't actually need the jersey. Why should you enjoy your life when we could be working for freaking communism instead, and then everybody would be free? But no, you're selfish. You want to enjoy your life. You want to spend your discretionary income that you worked your ass off to earn, and you worked your ass off to build a stable platform of wealth, say a home that you own, so that you can risk spending your extra discretionary income on things that you enjoy, that enrich you on a mental, emotional, social, or spiritual level, but they're not basic needs. So screw you, working class. You betray. This is the whole attitude. I did the last podcast with it. Screw you, working class. You betrayed your revolutionary instinct. You became conservative. So fuck you and everything you enjoy.
Have you noticed something, Excel and Tema, that Lindsay's discourse is getting more and more angry?
It's this, yeah, he's finally caught up to MySpace.
Yeah, no shit, man.
He's finally on my level.
It's really good to hear. I love this dude, man. When he's ripping on people, man,
he started out like just going in at face value, not knowing anything. And he was typically like completely on board with why Trump is a problem, and thinking of things in terms of these different regimes and things like that. And then
next thing you know, he's out there saying "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, fast forward to now, like, this is the only way to fight back. Like, I see no other path forward. And it was never about Trump with him, right? I think it's like with a lot of people. It was never about Trump with me either when I started supporting Trump.
No, it
was about it was fuck you establishment.
The status quo, exactly. Yeah, yes.
Like Trump, like I've said a billion times,
and they don't fucking get that shit, man.
No, they don't understand.
It does not compute.
Trump's presidency was mostly unremarkable. Like, he did some modest reforms.
It was a fuck you from the fucking voting populace, and they didn't fucking get it.
Yeah, all they did is tell us.
So now we got to kick them.
For how bad of people we were for daring to pick that guy instead of their guy.
Girl, lady.
That person.
That G.
That birthing or non-birthing person.
Well, you know what? That is so fucking degrading. That is so fucking degrading. Do you have? And you might as well just call me a fucking breeder. Calling me a fucking birthing person? Are you serious? Like, it's so
next
fucking.
Wave in the women's equality movement is they have their uteruses removed so that they can't be considered concubine.
Good.
Oh, birthing person.
Sterilize yourselves, you fucking psychos.
Right, but I think everybody in the chat, we're all on the same page with this shit, aren't we? About the 2016 election wasn't about fucking Trump at all. It was about fuck you, establishment, and status quo.
After that. There was 4 years out of it after that. Like, there was no Russia story. It wasn't about that, right? It was about gaslighting the population.
Yes.
And making us feel bad. It was 4 years of the establishment making us plebs feel bad that we went for that guy.
We're still being punished. Hillary Clinton is still punishing this country.
Yeah.
So are the Democrats.
And Barry is helping.
Yeah.
What do you think all these mandates and shit are for?
Yeah.
What do you think all this shit is for? Sorry, go ahead, Excel.
Well, like, apparently criminal trespass is, if you do it in a government building, you definitely deserve to get shot, right? And then we need to lock anybody that trespasses, they need to be locked up indefinitely without bond. And then when they finally get to trial, they need a book thrown at them to get the maximum possible sentence for what is a crime that usually results in
ticket,
like a fine.
It's a ticket. Usually, you get site released 9 out of 10 times.
But we violated it happened in the holy sanctum of the establishment. So we've got.
But did you hear her call it the Sacred Hall?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm telling you. This is what they want us to believe.
Temples of Syrinx. Only the Rush fan will know what I mean by that.
And it was led.
Yes.
It was instigated by supporters of the guy they don't like.
Yeah, it could have been. It would have been whoever was running against her. They would have vilified them. Found a way to do it. Me tweet too.
See, I don't see Spittlebuggy. I get what you're saying, but I don't care if trans people look bad. I find most trans women offensive. As a woman, I find them offensive. They're cheap knockoffs for the most part. Most of them don't even try to be a real woman. They just try to be something they saw on fucking Jerry Springer. And
Basically.
I think it's just because of where I live, but I find it mostly offensive, and I tend not to talk to them.
If they commit to have that bottom surgery, then I'll be willing to talk to them.
No, it's the way they act. They take on the worst traits of femininity and then say they're exemplifying women. And it's insulting to those of us who act like ladies, who try our best to be, polite and civil in society and get along with everybody, and we try to conduct ourselves with dignity and grace. You have some dude who's 6'2", slaps himself in some fucking heels and puts on some makeup and gets some tits, and he walks around snapping his fingers and acting like his name is Shaniqua. And he thinks this is how women act, and it's disgusting. And it's offensive to women who know what it's like to really be a woman and want to do their best to be the best woman they can be. It really is very offensive.
Straight out of the Dave Chappelle skit. Like, you're just like, then we have these things called TERFs. Now, TERFs hate trans people. Well, I won't say hate's a strong word, but they kind of look like trans women. Like a black person looks at somebody, like a white person wearing blackface, right? Like, they're stealing my thing.
It is. Like,
it's just funny.
It's like, that's why I like Blair White so much. She encapsulates femininity and womanhood. And if you're gonna do it, fucking do it right. Don't be a fucking piece of shit and go around acting like you're, high and mighty and shit. No, you better act like a fucking graceful fucking human being. Like the expectation of every other creature with tits.
Once you join this cult and you come out as a trans person, you're giving at least by your fellow cult members, this large sense of entitlement that everybody else must. It's just like everybody else must care and must pay attention to your needs because you're trans and you're oppressed.
Well, fuck you. That's what I say to them is fuck you, because this is my house. This is my world. I was born with this shit, and I know what the expectations are, and bitch, you ain't meeting them.
Travis Gardner said your Twitter suspended, Miss Tema.
I think that's my old one. Here, I'll put my new one in, darling.
Sure, funny.
Yeah, it keeps like putting the old link down every time I try to update it. Let me see what you got. The Tim of the Hun, God damn it.
It's supposed to be Hun Sayeth.
I know the Hun Sayeth, right? Or the
Yeah,
Hun Sayeth.
the Hun Sayeth, I think. Or no, it's just Hun Sayeth. I put the link in the chat already.
Let me fix that real quick.
No, they should kill spiders, but they shouldn't open jars. Man, Squatch. They should ask somebody for help with jars, and they should do it politely. And they should say thank you when someone opens the door for them.
Right, it should be fixed.
And they shouldn't be screaming and yelling in public. You save that for your bathroom, where nobody can hear you, so that you don't embarrass your family when you're in public. Like, you're supposed to put your best foot forward every time you go out. That's that. Period. As a woman, you are supposed to put your best foot forward every time you go out. That is the expectation, and it always has been. Has been for thousands of fucking years. So when you see somebody walking around doing a shit job of it, of course it's going to be offensive. I get mad at women who don't act like women proper too. I fuck them. Like, no. And I'm not saying act all girly and wear a dress and makeup and shit. I'm saying act with feminine dignity and pride in who you are and what you do. That's all.
Joseph Mail asked me if I watched the video I sent him. I don't think so. Which one are you talking about? Anyway, let's play this and while I look for that, okay? Ready?
Okay.
Because these were luxuries, and former luxuries became basic needs. A normal development, he says, which under corporate capitalism extends the competitive business of living to newly created needs and satisfactions. So you now have all this stuff that you weren't hungry, you weren't cold, you didn't even know you needed it until you were comfortable, and then corporate capitalism came in and advertised it to you. This is his paranoia. Paranoid personality disorder to the core with this stuff. This is his paranoia. Capitalism snuck in and advertised to you, hey, Mr. Working Class Guy, I see you have a comfortable home. I see you have enough to eat. Did you know that you could have this freaking cool thing that you might actually enjoy, and it fits the lifestyle that you seem to derive spiritual and psychic and social and emotional benefit from? Hey, you could have this. You could be this. You could be the kind of guy who has custom bowling shirts and custom bowling shoes and a really nice ball. Luxuries that have become basic needs. You can have that. And he says capitalism sneaks in and extends the competitive business of living to newly created needs and satisfactions. You might be happy with your own, custom bowling gear. You might be happy with that. You might like your hot rod. You might like your sports memorabilia. You might like all that, but that is a newly created needs and satisfactions. You stupid conservative jerk who should have stayed miserable so you would have been a Marxist revolutionary. That's the entire point of this part of the essay. I'm not exaggerating. I've done a whole bunch of reading of this thing to you guys, so you know I'm telling the truth. Go listen to it. I've got like 10 other episodes on Marcuse already. This is number 3, the Subverting Forces in Transition. I think I titled it Marcuse's Subverting Forces in Transition on the New Discourses podcast. It's a few episodes back. Go find it. Or listen to the one immediately previous to this, where I talk about the rise of the new proletariat. I talk about the same thing. He says, the fantastic output, because this is weird, because he's like getting his rocks off on how good stuff is, but he's pissed off that it's good. The fantastic output, he says, of all sorts of things and services defies the imagination while restricting and distorting it in the commodity form. So yeah, by the way, your hot rod, your bowling stuff, whatever thing is that makes you happy, it's not really meeting your needs. It's not really enriching your life. It's not really allowing you a path to connection and spirituality and happiness and the life you actually wanted to live in a free society. It's not really doing that. No, it's all commodity form. It's all fake. It's all fake. It's just a commodity. It's been packaged up and sold to you as an image. Hey, if you're the kind of guy who drives this kind of car, you'll be cool. You're a Corvette man. So you work your ass off, save up your money, get your Corvette, and you only enjoy it because the freaking marketers at Chevrolet convinced you that you are a Corvette man, and now you identify as that. It's just a commodity. It's in commodity form. He says this commodity form through which capitalist production enlarges its hold over human existence. It's not that there's, for Marcuse, it's not that there's this increasing set of options that allow you to enrich your life your way.
The name of this is called Sustainability, the New Tyranny. I just put sustainability in the title for this, but let's see, somebody, Man Squatch asked, I'm finding this guy, this narrate is reading is trying to frame serving the public as a bad thing.
Well,
I think what he's saying is not like Lindsay's saying that, but the writer is.
Yeah, Marcuse.
yeah,
saying that.
Marcuse he also said that kindness was a weakness as well. He said that kindness was led to tyranny as well. So, like, he didn't say that in this excerpt. He said it in something else. But the guy's kind of a POS, if you ask me.
Yeah, for anybody just tuning in, I know we've interrupted a lot, but this is James Lindsay explaining what somebody else thinks and then following up with why it's bad. This is not him explaining what he thinks.
No, if you listen to what he says on He Thinks, you'll hear me yell at him.
Yeah, no, he's out of fucks on all this shit, man. Right?
Yeah, he is. He's finally.
It's not-
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, I was
But
just
you're
agreeing.
Oops. Oh, if it was Vaush.
If it was Vouch, you'd hear me screaming.
He would have defended CP a few times in the
Ugh.
process.
Scumbag. I do not like Vouch. He called Tim Pool right wing.
Tim Pool's
In fact, they call him an
Nazi. What are you
extreme
talking
right winger.
about?
You know what?
Tim
Vouch
Pool
might
smells
be,
his own farts.
Vouch might be his the great example of the Marcusian mindset, where everything that's not explicitly left is right wing.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, dude. I hate these people.
How do you really feel, Miss Tema?
I can't stand postmodernists.
I feel you. They are
They're just
pretentious
bitching.
fucks, aren't they?
And they just bitch. They
Yeah.
bitch for the sake of bitching. And it's like, okay, if I wanted to do that, I'd just go sit in my living room.
Exactly.
Why did you dedicate 800 pages to this? There's no fucking reason.
They had to get published. Remember, they say publish or perish. Academia, fam. That's what this is all about. That's right. It's the new narrative on Tim Pool. All right.
See, I don't like Tim Pool. He was like interesting to hear his opinion for a while, but I don't need to listen to 30 minutes of his opinion.
Right.
He's more interested in the people he's talking to.
Well, during his shows, that's one thing. But when he's reading reading his articles and talking about them, it's like he does tend to bloviate. Like it's like I don't know. I'm more of a person that appreciates economy when it comes to language. Because I think that the more words, people think that more words makes language more precise. I think the exact opposite. I think more words just tends to lead to confusion. If that makes any sense.
You want to say as much as possible with as few words as possible. Yes, I get it.
Yes, exactly. And then that way there's no misinterpretation.
Well, we used to use French as the language of science because it was so concrete and absolute until post-Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very bad to dilute language. Sometimes you need new words because you create new things.
Right. That's different.
However, or you have a synergy of things that happen in experience, and you need a new word for these new experiences. Yes, you can expand vocabulary to incorporate actual stuff, but when you start changing existing vocabulary and justifying it, you've destroyed the language, and that is going to stop communication. He is saying literally the opposite of reality there.
Exactly.
I hate fucking communists for this reason. Man.
Kind of want to beat Tim with the roll-up newspaper.
Shit, yeah, dude, bad. Rub his nose in it.
Bad dog. Bad Tim. Bad skater. All right,
Bad quarter Asian. Bad quarter Asian. Sorry.
Eating some kind of like freedom dream where there's more and more stuff available. Like, no, it's all fake. It's all commodities, and it's taking hold over human existence. It's controlling everybody, making you have to keep working in the rat race so you can earn the money, so you can feel satisfied. It's because your Corvette's not enough. Now you got to buy the Corvette gear. Now you got to buy a little model Corvette for your house. Now you got to get this. Now you got to buy track time if you like to drive it fast or whatever it is. It's all commodities, and it's all being manufactured. This is his paranoia. This is what one-dimensional man is all about. We'll read from that in a minute too. And he says, and yet precisely through this spread of this commodity form, the repressive social morality which sustains the system is being weakened. So because you don't have this repressive social morality anymore, because we now have consumer morality instead. And as he calls this an obvious contradiction into which liberating possibilities of the technological transformation of the world, the light and the free life on the one hand, and the intensification of the struggle for existence on the other, which is communism versus this life where you get to work and have cool stuff, and there's lots of cool stuff available. He says that generates among the underlying population that diffused aggressiveness, which unless steered to hate and fight the alleged national enemy, hits upon any suitable target, white or black, native or foreigner, Jew or Christian, rich or poor. So this is relative privation. You're racist because you aren't being able to get everything that you want or whatever. Unless you have a common national enemy, the alleged national enemy. He's talking about global communism there, by the way. And he says, this is the aggressiveness of those with a mutilated experience. Your Corvette, your bowling shoes, they mutilated your experience, you fucking working class, non-revolutionary conservative asshole that we all hate so much because you aren't being a Marxist anymore, because you have a good life, where Horkheimer said that we found out that advanced capitalism, Marx was wrong. It doesn't make people miserable. It helps them build a better life. And this was a crisis to these neo-Marxist fucks. This is the aggressiveness of those with the mutilated experience, with the false consciousness and the false needs, the victims of repression, who, for their living, depend on the repressive society and repress the alternative, meaning communism. Their violence is that of the establishment and takes as its targets figures which, rightly or wrongly, seem to be different and to represent an alternative. In other words, radicals and revolutionaries and other nonsense. So this is the place that we're at. And we're going to come back to some essay on liberation in a minute, but let me just read to you just a tiny bit here from. I'm not even going to try to get too much of One-Dimensional Man, because he goes on, he hits this point actually quite repetitively. This maybe isn't the best, most representative paragraph. Turns out there's a lot of them. I was skimming through the first chapter earlier, and where he outlines what a one-dimensional civilization is, and I could read this whole section, but it's so clear. Like, okay, I'll read some part that I wasn't even going to. It's a whole section. I could just so easily read it, because he's complaining. People recognize themselves in their commodities. They find their soul in their automobile, hi-fi set, split-level home, kitchen equipment. God forbid you be happy in stuff you actually enjoy. You stupid working-class schlub who's not a proletariat revolutionary. You don't want to join a liberation movement because you get to find your soul in your automobile, hi-fi set, split-level home, kitchen equipment, and screw you for being happy. He says the very mechanism which ties the individual to his society has changed, and social control is anchored in the new needs which it has produced. The prevailing forms of social control are technological in a new sense, to be sure. The technical structure and efficacy of the productive and destructive apparatus, has been a major instrumentality for subjecting the population of the established social division of labor throughout the modern period. Moreover, such integration has always been accomplished by more obvious forms of compulsion, loss of livelihood, the administration of justice, the police, the armed forces. It still is. But in the contemporary period, the technological controls appear to be the very embodiment of reason for the benefit of all social groups and interests, to such an extent that all contradiction seems irrational and all counteraction impossible. See, this, by the way, this is one of those reasons that I say that we have been stuck into Herbert Marcuse's world. Here's iron law of woke projection. This is exactly what we're living in right now, right? But not the way he's described it. He's talking about a free society generating this, but we now have a tyrannical technocracy generating this. And the technological controls appear to be the very embodiment of reason for the benefit of all social groups and interests. Anybody's got their COVID policy there, by the way, but it's his people enforcing this shit on us. To such an extent that all contradiction seems irrational, you anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorist, and all counteraction impossible. Yeah, because we're going to fire you from your job, loss of livelihood. We're going to put you in a goof camp, administration of justice. We're going to send the cops to make sure you stay home when you're supposed to, the police, and we're going to radicalize the military to make sure that nobody can get away with it. The armed forces, it still is. They're manifesting his world. They've read this stuff, even the places where he's issuing a warning, and they've turned us into this world. It's a very odd thing. I know this section is really all about that, but that's not my point right now. We can come back to that. I don't want to do another damn podcast on this guy, but we can come back to this. The point is that his view is that this new high-tech advanced capitalism, this is written in 1964 now, changes how people are, and it makes them happy and makes them think that they're having an enjoyable life, but what it's actually more importantly doing is stealing away their revolutionary potential.
Think back to the first James Lindsay podcast we heard, and then compare it to the way he's talking now. He's like, dude, fuck these neo-Marxist assholes. And then he's just like, I'm getting on a tangent. Like, I don't want to have to do another podcast on this fucker. Like, I'm just like, yes.
Yeah, he went from trying to give everybody the benefit of the doubt to, fuck you, I know better now.
Yeah, like, you guys are, you're well, like I put it, like they're either liars, idiots, or cultists.
Well, and it's been fun watching his adaptation, and his his anger just increase, as time goes on.
He's still not necessarily particularly right wing. I bet if you asked him, he would be like,
"He's a left. He's a traditional leftist, man.
He's a classical liberal."
Yes, absolutely.
Well, like even further than that, like he probably wants government to do a lot more than I think it should do. I don't know. Maybe those are contradictions that he'll hear out later, and he's just like, never mind. You must never give government this power because there's always going to be another wave of, let's try real socialism. It's going to take advantage of any power we give government to use against the people to implement it.
Yeah. I think he's getting to the point where he's like, no. He's realizing that when you give government power, you end up with this kind of dumb shit because this is the natural outcome of giving a government power. They'll try to figure out how to take more, which is why Benjamin Franklin was so holy pissed. Holy hell pissed. Sorry, I can talk, I swear. Holy hell pissed when they walked out of the Convention of State, or the Constitutional Convention, with "Here's your republic, hopefully you can keep it," because he fucking knew what was going to happen because they decided on a two-party system. And he was pissed. And this is why, because he knew what was going to happen. It was observably obvious.
You want to keep rolling?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm
this
doing
isn't
too many
quite
obvious
what
people.
part I wanted to read. The part I want to read is where he defines one-dimensional man and the one-dimensional thought and behavior, technically, for the one-dimensional society. He says the productive apparatus and the goods and services. This is a couple pages later, the productive apparatus and the goods and services which it produces sell. That's in scare quotes, or impose the social system as a whole. The means of mass transportation and communication, the commodities of lodging, food, and clothing, the irresistible output of the entertainment and information industry carry with them prescribed attitudes and habits. Certain intellectual and emotional reactions which bind the consumer more or less pleasantly to the producers and, through the latter, to the whole. The products indoctrinate and manipulate. They promote a false consciousness which is immune against its falsehood. And as these beneficial products become available, and let me hit that word again, beneficial products. And as these beneficial products become available to more individuals and more social classes, that's you poor people. That's you poor people. And as these beneficial products become available to more individuals and more social classes, in other words, as poor people can get what they want, not just what they barely need, the indoctrination they carry ceases to be publicity. It becomes a way of life. What does he have to say about this? Way of life. You same theme, right? It is a good way of life. That's what he says about it. It is a good way of life, much better than before. And as a good way of life, here comes the Marcusean punchline. And as a good way of life, it militates against qualitative change, aka it drives out communist discontent. And as a good way of life, it militates against qualitative change. You enjoy your life. You stupid, poor, lower-class people who can now have more beneficial products than ever, and your needs are met, and you might actually have stuff you like, and they indoctrinate you with that. That's how they get you. And it becomes your way of life. You care too much about your Corvette you worked your ass off to get. You care too much about your bowling shoes, etc. It's a good way of life, much better than before, and as a good way of life, it militates against qualitative change. Thus emerges a pattern of one-dimensional thought and behavior in which ideas, aspirations, and objectives that by their content transcend the established universe of discourse and action and are either repelled or reduced to terms of this universe. That's the key of the one-dimensional. Thus emerges a pattern of one-dimensional thought and behavior in which ideas, aspirations, and objectives that by their content transcend the established universe of discourse and action. That's a complicated bunch of words, right? Let me just change that for you to what he means. Thus emerges a pattern of one-dimensional thought and behavior in which communism is either repelled or reduced to terms of this universe. And by being reduced to terms of this universe, he says he would be saying that it's misrepresented or that it's commodified and bought up and brought into the existing repressive system. They are redefined, he says, by the rationality of the given system and of its quantitative extension.
I need
and so
that translation.
This is what one-dimensional man is all about, is that the capitalist consumer society eats everything and turns everything into the one-dimensional project of continuing this unsustainable project, this unsustainable growth that is going to risk everything.
Oh my God. Okay, hold on. Communism can't exist in this universe? What? Is he saying communism is God?
No, he was he's talking about, right? So as long as we have these capitalist things or whatever, that like it's a bad thing because it would push. Because people, like what he's saying is, people are happier.
People would be happy.
People are happy, so they're getting their Corvette and they're meeting their needs, right? Under a capitalist system. So because of that, it pushes communism out, or would make it so that it would only exist in a way that was actually just commodified by capitalists. And that's why I made the joke. Did you buy your Black Lives Matter merch yet? What about
I was
those
laughing at the
t-shirts?
whole.
I heard they're on sale.
Yeah, I was laughing at the whole, communism can't exist in this universe thing. Like,
That's the way Marcuse put it, is that it can't exist in the universe where people are actually happier with capitalism. And I was like, yes, that's what we've been saying.
Exactly, man.
but the wording sounded like something out of the Bible.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
It was hilarious. I'm sorry, I was hearing the cult stuff back then. I was sorry. Sorry.
It's still a cult mentality,
Yeah.
Are you all ready?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if I can find the part. There's one more part here in Essay on Liberation that kind of makes this kind of case for me, but it's kind of all scattered. I didn't feel like gathering quotes like a grown-up. The argument that he makes in kind of the briefest, it's near the end. The argument that he makes is that this is unsustainable. I think it may be actually the first thing that I read. This is an unsustainable trajectory. We're going to keep making more. Yeah, and it's going to drive capitalism to its brink. So that's this argument. So this is the background milieu for the points that I want to make of this in this podcast, and that is that for Marcuse, capitalism isn't just something that's going to teeter and collapse. And like we talked about in the previous podcast, the neo-Marxists believed, unlike the Marxists before them, the society had two possible trajectories out of capitalism, and they criticize older Marxists for believing it only had one. So traditional Marxism believes in a strong historicism where capitalism is finally going to awaken those alienated feelings, the discontentedness in the working class. It's going to rise up. It's going to produce a proletariat revolution, and that proletarian revolution is going to take us through into socialism. So capitalism is going to give way to socialism. It's only a matter of when, and when the conditions can be made right. Lenin says, accelerate the contradictions, comrade, to make sure that the conditions are made right. And that's Marxism. And the neo-Marxists said, oh, we messed up. Fascism can happen too. So for them, capitalism is going to disintegrate, but it's either going to disintegrate into fascism, or it's going to disintegrate, or it's going to be saved, I should say, by the socialists having the revolution. But ultimately, part of the argument that Marcuse makes very clearly is that capitalism is unsustainable. That's why he's begging with the reader in 1972 in Counter-Revolution and Revolt, can't we just be happy with less? We'll have less waste. We'll have to work less. We can be more content. We'll have more time. We'll have more freedom because we don't have to work as much. And
That's not
the sacrifices, we'll have less gadgets or fewer gadgets. Yeah, I think he says less, though. We'll have fewer gadgets and less plastic. Of course, he has to say plastic. It can't be like your cool bowling shoes or your Corvette or whatever. We're just going to have less stuff. If we just get the equity going and like simmer it down to a lower level where people have less stuff that they want, well, we wouldn't have to work as hard, and we'd have more time and more freedom. We'd produce less waste, and we would have less of the stupid planned obsolescence. It is actually a part of kind of junky capitalism, where we're not taking care of trying to make things work in the best way and are just pursuing profit principle. We could talk about the McDonald's. If you haven't looked into, I can't do the justice of the story, but the McDonald's ice cream machine story is a perfect example of where crony capitalism leads to a broken product and people getting ripped off. But the problem isn't capitalism, it's crony capitalism, and crony capitalism is like proto-fascism. So the problem is always in this cronyism, and the neo-Marxists conflated these, and they just believe that it'll always happen. Like it's impossible for, say, the FTC to step in and then, like they are now, and investigate McDonald's and its relationship with the ice cream machine Taylor to find out that there's probably some really, really dastardly monopoly behavior going on there, a very exclusive agreement that's leading to a crooked need for constantly calling repairmen to make the company lots of money at the expense of the franchise owners. But nevertheless, they act like that's not possible, and in the same breath they complain that somehow capitalism is working and making everybody have a better life. And it is exactly these kind of bumpers on crony capitalism and monopoly, like antitrust laws and things like that came into play, that fixed it. And the problem we face now is actually the same one, is that we have lots of great stuff for antitrust where it comes to the industrial sector. We understand how to apply it, in other words, and we didn't think very well about how to apply it to the finance and banking industry or to the big tech industry as those emerged. So now we have these kind of trust and crony capitalist problems emerging again. But the irony is that
we decided to hand them the monopoly. He's got that backwards. Like, I don't know what proverbial we he's thinking about, but the people who made those decisions knew very well what they were doing.
Yes. Very well what they were doing. It's obvious. If you read the legislation and the way things have been enacted, it's obvious. It's like in your face obvious. And Maskwatch is absolutely correct. The only monopolies were created by the government. See the slaughterhouse rulings.
That's part of the like root of the cronyism, right? So this McDonald's monopoly thing, like, it actually really it's a giant scheme of fraud, and fraud is a form of theft. Like, most of the things that he's talking about, right? Like, yes, it's corporations acting in bad faith, but it's doing things that we all agree are objectively illegal, right? Like, the McDonald's, like, the short story is they kept selling these faulty machines that had these complicated codes for how to fix them, right? And they were doing it on purpose. And then they were suing people that, like, figured out what was going on and, like, uploaded their own software into the machine so that they knew how to fix it, like these franchise owners. And I think that was actually their downfall, because that's what got them investigated for these ridiculous business practices where they're basically lying to customers about the product, or hiding. Some of it's just hiding information that is relevant to the quality of their product. And then also having to deal with
informed consent?
Right, yeah.
Sorry.
So, like, they don't know. And then it's also, so if you buy a McDonald's franchise, McDonald's is making you buy those machines, right? So, like, there's just information that you're leaving out. It's like, oh, by the way, we have this huge racket going on with this other company, so we're not going to tell you that when you sign your franchise agreement, but that's what's going on.
Are you talking about the ice cream machines?
Yeah,
the ice cream
what it
machines
was.
you only get to buy, there's only 2 models to buy.
Yeah, you could only buy, like, it's 1 or 2 options that you have as a franchise owner, and they all had the same built-in faults that caused the ice cream machine to break, and that the only people that could repair it were certified repairmen for these companies, and the repairs prices were ridiculous when it was always just some stupid shit, right? It was a racket between McDonald's and the company to fuck over franchise owners.
Just to get more money out of them.
Yep.
Just to get more money out of them. Yeah, and now there's like a big federal investigation into it, and there's about ready to be a big problem. So.
Hey, the good news is if you go to McDonald's for ice cream, you're probably not going to hear that the machine's broken very often anymore.
No shit.
I just don't want to go to McDonald's.
I know. I like it. I go there for breakfast sometimes, but that's it.
Well, maybe it's for cover. They're using wokeness and Marcuse's world, and they're imposing that world on us in order to be able to evade, I guess, the right kind of critique that whatever it is that they're succeeding to do with it. No, we're not, crony capitalists. That's a right-wing thing. We're obviously left-wing radicals while we're screwing everybody over. But the point is that capitalism is unsustainable.
Nope.
I don't know what's going on with this. Give me 1 second, fam. Well, it came up there. Sorry. Just trying to reset this thing. And what I have to do is that. And then do this. Y'all thinking that, all right, check.
Dastardly monopoly behavior going
Oh, there we go.
All right.
down there. A very exclusive agreement that's leading to a crooked need for constantly calling repairmen to make the company lots of money at the expense of the franchise owners. But nevertheless, they act like that's not possible, and in the same breath they complain that somehow capitalism is working and making everybody have a better life. And it is exactly these kind of bumpers on crony capitalism and monopoly, like antitrust laws and things like that came into play, that fixed it. And the problem we face now is actually the same one, is that we have lots of great stuff for antitrust where it comes to the industrial sector. We understand how to apply it, in other words, and we didn't think very well about how to apply it to the finance and banking industry or to the big tech industry as those emerged. So now we have these kind of trust and crony capitalist problems emerging again. And but the irony is that, well, maybe it's for cover. They're using wokeness and Marcuse's world, and they're imposing that world on us in order to be able to evade, I guess, the right kind of critique that whatever it is that they're succeeding to do with it. No, we're not, crony capitalists. That's a right-wing thing. We're obviously left-wing radicals while we're screwing everybody over. But the point is that capitalism is unsustainable. So, like I said, the second chapter of this essay, the point of that is we need to generate a new sensibility if we want to create a new liberated world where people have less and they work less and they have more time and more freedom. And we don't work just to produce the gadgets, to sell the gadgets, to have the gadgets, to produce the gadgets, to sell the gadgets, to have the gadgets, in this endless cycle. Like, I go to work producing gadgets that nobody needs, but somebody might want, and I do that just because there's a demand, but the demand is fake because it's all premised on the fact that nobody actually needs it, but they just want stuff. So they go and they produce crap nobody needs, and everybody's selling more and more crap nobody needs so they can make the money, so they can buy crap that they don't need, and that's how the consumer society traps you. That's kind of Marcuse's view, and he's like, this is unsustainable, it's going to push capitalism to its breaking point.
I don't see how you push a system that's based on ingenuity and people doing things to its breaking point. It's just going to do more shit. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't get that. It's organic. It's not it's not finite. It's based off of creativity and imagination. Those two things are infinitesimal in the human mind. So I don't know. To me, it sounds like a child's description of the world. It is incredibly immature, it's short-sighted, and lacks any real experience. It makes me think a 10-year-old wrote it.
It's not, it's kind of idealistic, you know?
It's all par for the course of the neo-socialist / Mark, whatever you want to call them at the time.
It's called commie scum. What they are?
Yeah, the communist fucks.
Commie scum. Just saying. All right, we got about 10 more minutes. What do you want to do? Listen to 5 more minutes of him and talk, or do y'all want to just talk the rest of the show out?
Why don't we just talk the rest of the show out? It's a pretty good place to stop.
Yeah.
We can talk the rest of it out. I linked the video early.
1 minute left, Mark. So
I'll link the video again. We got through thirds of it, so rather than do a part 2, anybody that was interested in what James was saying there, go check out the rest of the video on his channel. We did not get permission for James Lindsay to play it, but I don't think he's the type to really care if you stream his stuff and comment it.
He would like this show.
Maybe.
You know?
Maybe.
He'd probably be like, God, what are these fucking idiots? Like, they don't get it.
I'm the idiot. I'm the smooth brain. I mean, you know, I feel
part of the reason we do this show is to slow people like James Lindsay down a little bit and try to unravel what he's talking about, mm-hmm. because he's been doing this for a long time and he has a lot of content and a lot of it links to each other. And like I said, I've said 1 billion times. So like all this woke communist bullshit is wrapped in it's just wrapped in layer of shit after layer of shit. And it's hard to get through all the shit to figure out what they're actually trying to do.
They're trying to make you crazy so they can take over control.
Yep.
Sorry, I just got an email, guys. My tablet got really loud across the room.
It's fine.
My bad.
Well, you were talking about words or whatever.
Disruptive.
Is the other reason to change the meaning of words, right, or create new words, is to like Dave Chappelle is win arguments when your ideology is morally bankrupt. It's pretty convenient to adopt words like diversity and turn it to mean something that is actually the opposite of diversity.
It's actually segregation.
Yeah, it's actually placing people in these various identity groups and then demanding representation based on these specific identity groups. And by the way, to be a part of that identity group, not only do you have to have the superficial traits, but you also have to agree with the concepts of diversity as laid out. So basically what they mean is, that's why it's identity Marxism, right? And
yeah.
It's why being black's not enough, right? That's why Larry Elder is a black white supremacist. Like, that was literally painted or printed in California newspapers.
Yeah, it was in the Washington Times or the LA Times.
It's insane.
To deter people from voting for Larry Elder. by
I think Elder won.
showing. Can we say that? Like they're not hip. They're not hip to that. I was like, Elder Larry Elder won.
Nope.
4-5.
Sorry, I know too many people in Cali that were bitching about not being able to vote that day. So, and now suddenly they have a bunch of crazy mandates. So I don't know. I just don't trust the media.
Yeah, I mean,
I question everything they say now.
I'm just convinced the people of California they like having their fucking face under a boot.
Ah.
That's what they want. Like, please beat me.
So are they masochists? Is that
me.
what we're saying?
I think so. I don't abuse me. Just make sure you abuse the people I don't like even more.
Well, oh yeah. Well, that's kind of like what it's out like up here. Like, people up here are weird, though. I don't
Yes, that's what I think in Portland is. Like, they're just like, please abuse us. Please make our lives hell. Just make sure that the people we don't like, make sure that their lives are even worse.
Well, you know, you learn a lot about a society based on how people drive in their traffic, I've found, after living in several places in this country. And Portlanders like to try to run each other off the road. Like, they try to jockey to force each other off the road to be first. They intentionally cut each other off and do nasty stuff. These people are very, very petty when they're driving. And I think that kind of shifts and translates out into the rest of their culture. But they're very passive aggressive about it. And they won't direct anything at you. They'll just do weird shit around you to make your life suck. It's really weird. Everybody's so miserable. I don't get it.
Me neither. I'm glad I don't live there. But I don't know.
Confusing.
It seems like it's coming for everywhere. Fortunately here, like in the southern Midwest, things are... You get a little bit of
Becca, you are not joking. Fridays in Houston is the scariest I've ever driven, and I learned how to drive on the 91 in California. She's not lying. Don't come to Houston, then we have crazy road rage. Yes, they do. I have never seen so many people get out of their cars and start hitting each other before.
Things are pretty chill here.
I'm not going to say anything racist about Hispanic culture or tempers. So.
Shoes are flying, dude. Sorry.
It's fine.
You get huaraches thrown at you when I was a kid. Don't piss off the abuelas.
I made the chicharrones. So.
Chicharrones? I love the chicharrones. Anyway. So I grew up in an area where I was one of like 3 white kids. Everybody else was Hispanic. So. Talk to me about that white privilege, y'all.
Yeah. And that's what's so funny is that it's like there's this one size fits all kind of concept to it, and yet on the other hand it's a bunch of individuals, all these cubby holes joined together by intersectionality.
Yeah, so it's actually no surprise at all. I bet you, like, if you looked at the group that were most opposed to this critical theory nonsense, like, first off, I think you're actually going to find out that outside of some stuff from CRT, you're going to find an overwhelming number of black people are not down for the broader critical theory agenda, right? Particularly the gender issue stuff. Like, they're very conservative on that. But the other group would be white poors. Like, how are you going to get poor white people to sit there and acquiesce to this idea that they have some sort of privilege? Like, you know the white poors exist, and there's a lot of them. There's more of them than any other poors.
Well, that doesn't count. Those white people don't really exist. They aren't actually poor. But they don't actually exist.
Well, yeah, of course, not according to them. It's they had this privilege that they somehow didn't figure out how to take advantage of.
Yeah.
But they weren't notified of it. They forgot to turn in their privilege card for their,
Well, that's just like the only group of people that their racial name is slave are white people. We can't Slav. Slav is the term for slave. That's an entire race of people designated with the name slave. And not a single one of them has, well, okay, maybe some of them have some dark skin, but they got like some very blue eyes, y'all. Okay? So, like, the whole thing, there's so much reality that just slaps this whole idea in the face. It makes it really, really, really hard for me to not yell at people when they say it.
I mean, furthermore, you'd think you could get the white pores on the side of the communist, right? Like, I think there's some history there, right? Cultural things that are passed down from generation to generation of poor white people. But the fact of the matter is if they were listening to Marcusta right there, they would have been like, what do you mean I shouldn't be happy that I earned just enough extra money to afford something nice for myself, like a flat screen TV? In fact, that's a typical thing with all poor people, right? Every time they have disposable income, they want to just buy something nice so that their life is a little bit, better. Instead of just having to get by on the bare essentials, which is a time that they would have remembered because they're poor, right? Like, and most people, when they're poor, they don't stay poor, right? That's just the fact. Most people are not poor their entire life.
No, economic mobility is incredibly fluid in America. Like, it's the most economically it's the most fluid country in the world when it comes to economic mobility. We have the most jump and increase. Yeah.
Yeah, even as we make it harder and harder to do that, it's still not that hard. I mean, we are making it harder through all of these, rules, regulations, bullshit going on with education, inflationary spending policies. Like, I don't want to deter from that, but even with that, it turns out the power of markets in a wealthy nation makes it so that people that start at the bottom of the income bracket can soon find themselves well up closer to the top.
Well,
like, even being in the top 70% doesn't make you super rich, right? But you're well off.
It's not even okay. So when he's talking about this being happy with more stuff, no, you work harder to get better things. Like, my husband will proudly work a 14-hour day. He'll put in 60 to 70 hours a week and he won't complain. So that I can go to the store and I can get my daughter a $75 jacket that we know will keep her warm for the whole fucking winter.
It'll keep her warm, it'll look nice.
And she'll feel good about herself. And it's all these things that you want to do for your kids. And you're telling me that happiness that has nothing to do with the stuff, but is all about succeeding at the non-economic role you have in your world, raising children and carrying on your posterity. This is part of the human condition, and it's actually the largest motivator for why we have, air quote, greed, which is really ambition, and it's to make things better for our progeny. So these people make me fucking crazy because he's saying that you can find happiness by not making life better for your progeny. But that is the fundamental basis for humanity, is trying to make things better for the next generation. It's the only reason we have fucking civilization to begin with.
Yeah.
Another
It's the whole point of a nation state too, which goes well beyond the head of
protect your fucking kids. Yes.
Well, yeah, it's like the idea of a nation state is that so that you start one, you build up a civilization, and then that's why we call it that's the birthright of the next generation to pick up where you left off, right? It's not the birthright of somebody else's kids to come into the country and try to take it over. That's fundamentally what a nation state is, right? It's just declaring that, like, you know, the generational people of this nation state from the time it's formed are going to determine the destiny, the success or the failure of the nation state.
Yes, but he's completely ignoring the fundamental. We're talking like the biological imperative here, guys. Like, the whole reason humans want to go out and procreate and have sex is so they can make more people. Like, it's biologically, biochemically incentivized in our bodies. So this is stupid. This makes me crazy. This makes me crazy because I hate how they just ignore actual human nature.
Well, it's all social constructed. And socially constructed to them just means that it could be reconstructed in any way and all be all the same.
No, because social construction happens on an organic level. If you're doing real social construction, it's organic. You can't create it.
Well, that's true too, and it's like, it's almost like the word social construct doesn't have any real meaning, right? Like, sure, we're social beings. A lot of what we do is social constructed but like, there's biological pressures and environmental pressures that cause us to make those constructs. Like,
it's
so it doesn't
because
really
nothing happens in a vacuum.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like, that's the difference, right? So when they say like this is just like sex is just, or gender is just a social construct, right? Like, in a very superficial way, that's true, but like, it's not. It doesn't really mean anything whenever you make the term social construct to be something so ridiculous, right? Like, something we know that is arising from, environmental and biological factors.
Yeah. Shit, I can't type, y'all.
But anyway, all right, we're 5 past the half hour. We go ahead and wrap this up and chill out what we need to chill out.
Yeah, I haven't seen my husband in almost 48 hours. I'd like to go see my husband.
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm saving you from yourself, because the way we're going, you're going to be angry for another 25 minutes if we keep letting you talk.
Oh, dude, don't even let me get started on. Yeah, I have children, so when I see people doing things like this, it makes me very. It hones in on that mom gene thing, and I get all kinds of wee-weed up, and I've actually dressed down full-grown adults in public because I really don't give a fuck. If you're acting like a child and I see it in front of my kids, I will call you on it. I don't care. I'm an asshole. I'll do it.
All right, so what have you got coming up, Emma?
Well, I've got appointments every day next week and every day the week after that. So, I'm really hoping this will turn into a house we can live in, so I can actually generate a schedule instead of, oh, well, I have 5 minutes this week. I don't have the time in the next 2 weeks. So it's going to be at least 3 weeks until I have something up, but I'm going to try to get on Twitter more this week or this weekend and see if I can. But I also have doctor's appointments this weekend. So
Thanks, Travis.
I don't know, man. So
Right on.
oh, sorry, guys. It's just chaos in my life right now.
Here. Excelereight. What about you, man?
See you guys here next week on Accelerated Deconstructed, and before then, I think Ireight's got a couple shows.
Yeah, all right. So Friday night, I will be doing the Cream Stream. All right, you remember that? 2 hours on YouTube, Twitch, and Odyssey, and then a final hour on just Twitch and Odyssey, and where we really get to the stuff that YouTube doesn't like. And this is working out. The idea actually has paid off. And then Sunday, I will be talking with none other than Evil Dead Ed. And if you've been following me on Twitter, you'll be like going, what the fuck? But it's cool. He's a cool guy. And we're going to hang out and we're going to talk about all kinds of shit, especially horror films. Dude is into horror films like me. So And then of course me and Becca will be doing more Ayn Rand on Monday. So
Okay, her name is Ayn, not Anne.
Okay. Ayn Rand.
I'm kidding. I'm kind of a fangirl. I am an objectivist, so.
Yeah, no shit. Exactly. Objectivism. Exactly. And on
Fantastic.
That note,
It's a wonderful philosophy.
It is. But yeah, so that's what the next really almost week, and then we'll be here next week. So shoot, I ain't got nothing else to say. What about y'all? Say goodbye.
Literal.